So it's finally time to talk about our favorite Nintendo fanboy again, Harmon Smith, as he thought it would be a real funny idea to talk about Elden Ring and Shadow of the Erdtree. And somehow, Elden Ring / Shadow of the Erdtree is failing to hype people up, is also failing as a game, and FromSoft is dead. Here, take a listen to this title. Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree fails to save From Software from the gaming crash. And there's the like to dislike ratio, so you can see that a lot of people absolutely disagree with them. Of course it's not accurate, but regardless, you can just see that people don't agree with them at all. Now that I think about it, I don't think there has been anyone that I have ever spoken to or have ever seen in my comment sections actually defend Harmon Smith. And that shouldn't be surprising. He does have a lot of horrendous and really hot takes on situations, but then again, he does actually have some good opinions here and there. So it's not all bad for Harmon. But anyway, let's get into the video.
Pre-order my book, American Evil, in the description below.
I don't know about you, but I think this is an L compared to his original intros where he would give you a whole bunch more to listen to before actually starting the video. It's honestly an L. I don't know why you would stop doing that. It was honestly the best part of your videos. I clearly didn't hate it.
It's hard to believe that after 2 long years of irrelevancy, Elden Ring is finally trying to make itself talked about again by releasing a new DLC.
Damn, those 25 million copies sold in the first year and a half really hit you hard, didn't it, Harmon? Elden Ring is so irrelevant, it's made more money than most other games would make in a year, let alone a couple years.
Out of nowhere, we are getting Shadows of the Erdtree. You know, the silliest name for a DLC I've ever heard in my life. Like, oh, look, you have your little knight guy going up against skeletons and fire demons. The most boring, generic, uninspired enemies I've ever seen in my life. Like, even the trailers, which are obviously fake.
I just can't do it. I can't take this shit no more, man. A fake trailer. Did I hear that right? A fake trailer. You know, From Software's known for faking their trailers, guys. They're definitely the Ubisoft of Japan, am I right? Oh boy. Like, what type of schizo take was that? It's gonna be fake? From Software isn't known for really letting down their community, except for with Dark Souls Remastered, which that was just kind of an L game, but then again, it's just Dark Souls 1. That wasn't worth the price. But I don't think they've ever really lied to us or promised something that never actually happened. And now that you mention that stuff is generic, right, like skeletons, like no shit, it's a fantasy game. Every fantasy game needs to have some of those generic enemies. It's how you identify fantasy in most games. But are you telling me this guy right here is generic? I don't see many other games trying to create similar enemy designs, similar art styles to what From Software does, with their enemies, characters, and just boss design. And it should also be said for their storytelling, they really do go off the design of the map and the enemies in the world as well, as that also helps tell the story and build out the world since they don't use more conventional storytelling for the most part. So a lot of these enemy placements and enemy designs really do play a big part in From Software building up their stories and how people may perceive the world around them in those games.
With, like, you know, those computer generated, like, fight sequences, they look slow and stilted. You know, like you see a guy just swing a sword and you just do like the stupid Dark Souls roll.
You really don't understand what Souls combat is. We're gonna use Dark Souls 3 as an example, as I believe it had some of the best boss design when it comes down to how combat can be approached. You need to treat Souls games like a rhythm game. Every time a boss attacks, it's gonna go for a certain amount of time, so let's say he attacks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. He takes a little break, it's your turn to attack. And then it can spice it up by feinting the attacks to try and get you off guard, do new attacks, uncommon attacks, and just have a whole different moveset. It's all about memorizing the patterns of the attacks, and treating it more like it's a rhythm game. At least that's how I would word Dark Souls combat. And this analogy mainly applies to the newer Souls games. Most of the old Souls games only have like 1 or 2 attack combos and that's pretty much it, or it really depends on the bosses you're fighting in those old games, so it kinda works for the most part as an analogy to look at Souls games combat. Because if you want to get into real nitty gritty of Souls combat, Harmon, and just say, oh look, it's really easy, you just swing your sword when you're also not including bows, magic, sorceries, pyromancies, throwing daggers, throwing weapons, dung pies, all these other weapons that can be used in certain circumstances, or just used to play the game how you desire to play the game. So I wouldn't really say that the game is simplistic. When you put all the features together, it becomes a really competent game. And it should be said that all these Souls-like games that try to copy Dark Souls or try to take inspiration from it never get anywhere comparable to it. You can look at games like Lords of the Fallen, Remnant from the Ashes, or Remnant 2, and many other smaller Souls-like games that take inspiration, but never really live up to the same complexity as a Souls game. You know what, if I keep going, I'll just keep talking about Souls games and then move on to its PvP, but we're gonna cut it off here, and I'll just leave it off with a little pro tip for those who like Dark Souls 3 PvP. If you think you're good because you can parry, you're very dead wrong. Most competitive PvPers don't even bother doing parrying because the trade isn't worth it. If you mess up that parry, you get hit 2 times guaranteed.
And just get out of the way. It's just like, how exactly is this supposed to be fun? Like, how exactly is this supposed to be interesting? Like, when you look at, like, when you compare this to Tears of the Kingdom, where you see things like those crazy vehicles and the skydiving and just, like, some of the enemies you'll be encountering, like, the difference in quality is straight up astounding.
I know, From Software games are so much more high quality, it's really astounding, isn't it? It's almost like you don't understand the fun of a Souls game, dying repeatedly for hours, and then finally beating the challenge that you were stuck on for ages is one of the most satisfying things you can do in almost any game, especially when the challenge is absolutely fair and you just suck at the game. But say it with me now, we don't mention fair and Dark Souls 2 in the same sentence.
Right. And obviously that was the case from the get-go. Breath of the Wild, a 2017 release, stomped Elden Ring. Like, older Zelda games stomped Elden Ring. So to see people, like, continue saying, OMG, it has 10 million views on YouTube, nobody cares. Like, nobody cares. Okay? Shadows of the Erdtree is not gonna magically make Elden Ring relevant again.
Well, Harmon, you can tell that to the 25 to 30 million copies sold. So, I don't know, ask all those people that are most certainly anticipating the DLC.
Yeah, right? It's not magically going to save From Slop from what's coming, right? It's not magically going to become good because Namco Bandai released a trailer, okay? Like, it's not going to be that big of a deal. And you can already kind of see that, right, in the community. It's kind of shocking, really, how little discussion there is regarding the Elden Ring DLC.
I don't know about you, but that sounds like one major cope, because I just looked up Elden Ring, and the first video that came up was from a content creator telling people to get ready for the Elden Ring DLC. And it should also be noted that all the trailers have over around 3 million views or more. So to say that people don't care about this DLC is just one of the most idiotic takes I've ever heard you say, but then again, it's just one giant cope from you, because you can't actually play Elden Ring on your Nintendo Switch.
Because Elden Ring is played out, it's boring, it's uninspired. Like, the only time you ever hear anybody talk about it at all is when they're trying to damage control the crashing video game industry. Like, whenever someone tries to bring up how we haven't gotten any good games over the past 10 years. What about Elden Ring? Yeah, Elden Ring is an example of what people are talking about when they say that gaming is stagnant and boring, if you're not a Nintendo fan.
Okay, I can partially agree with him saying that Nintendo is the only one that's actually hard carrying the industry and actually wants to give you an incentive to buy their platform, but then again, that's an incredibly weak platform, so most people would either pick that or a PC. But yes, the gaming crash will happen, especially in the West, because Western developers are too focused on adding politics to their video games, instead of just making a good video game at the end of the day that everyone can sit down and enjoy regardless of where you're from and who you are. But no, they gotta waste their time preaching to all these people that won't even play their game. So good, I hope that crash will happen soon, and they lose their jobs. See, Harmon, what you should be doing right now is praising Elden Ring because it made those Western developers absolutely lose their minds, saying Elden Ring isn't a game, it doesn't have a story, it doesn't have all this, it can't be a real game. How can this Japanese company actually make a good game and not waste their time trying to do diversity and all these other things? Do you remember that? How all these developers from the West and all these, like, random idiots on the internet were just getting mad at Elden Ring? I hope that happens again when the DLC comes out, because oh my god, it would be great. I would love to make videos on that. That's something that I think we can all agree on that was just genuinely funny. They deserved all the hate they got for just saying stupid shit like, oh, Elden Ring's a bad game because it doesn't have this and that. I think they deserved all the criticism that they got, and I hope they get more of it if they choose to talk about the Elden Ring DLC.
Right. The reality is, Elden Ring has made no significant changes or improvements from Dark Souls, right? There has been no real evolution from the formula.
I do believe Elden Ring is a bit of a downgrade from Dark Souls 3. It's a very more casual game. It wasn't as hard as Dark Souls 3 or really gave me as much as a challenge as Dark Souls 3, but an actual innovation was making the game open world, and I believe it's called the Art of War system, where you can put different Art of Wars on the weapons, changing their enchantment, attribute system, and I think that damage it also does, because it also mixes the element damage and the physical damage of the weapon. So there you go, that's a big change. You couldn't do that in Dark Souls 3 to the same extent you could do it in Elden Ring. Also, we have a funny mount. His name is Torrent. Don't ever look up Elden Ring Torrent. It's interesting.
Right, just compare like Breath of the Wild to Skyward Sword, right? And you can see just the sheer amount of just evolution that game had over its predecessor. In fact, you can see more evolution from Skyward Sword to Twilight Princess than you could see from Demon's Souls to Elden Ring.
There are many differences, Harmon, mainly the refinements to the gameplay loop, to map design, to combat, to encounters, boss design. I can keep going.
Right. You know, those games play completely differently from each other, right? And you know, lots of people cope and seethe about it. Like, again, Skyward Sword, much like Tears of the Kingdom now, that game was heavily disregarded by gamers when it first came out, but it was very, very ill-deserved, right? And over time, the game began to build a very dedicated audience who love it and respect it for what it is, right? You know, same with Wind Waker, same with...
I won't lie, that kind of sounds like me with Dark Souls 2. God, I miss my beloved Dark Souls 2.
Slop has ever put out, right? Again, you guys are getting excited over a DLC. Oh, this'll save Elden Ring. Like...
Do I need to remind you? More than 25 to 30 million copies have been sold of Elden Ring. I don't think Elden Ring needs saving, Harmon. But then again, I wouldn't expect you to know that much because you're a genetic dead end.
And again, a big thing I've been seeing from the community is just the denial of Tears of the Kingdom's continued success, right? This is like the big thing.
I don't get why you refuse to live in a world where both can be successful and both can respect each other. I don't know why you need one to be more successful than the other. You got what you wanted, a successful Zelda game. Isn't that what you wanted? Tears of the Kingdom was successful.
I think that really motivated me to make this video is just seeing how many Elden Ring YouTubers are still in denial that Zelda has stomped their beloved franchise into the ground, and there will be no recovery from this. Like, going forward, I think it's been very clear that Nintendo has the ability and the capacity to innovate and evolve their Zelda formula.
You're telling me From Software can't innovate when they've done it many times with all their Souls games? Every Souls game feels better than the last for the most part because they're always learning and evolving. Even though I may not like Elden Ring for being open world, it's still a really good game.
Right? Like, it's crazy how Tears of the Kingdom takes place in the same setting as Breath of the Wild, and yet it has such wildly different mechanics and such a wildly different plot. It really does come off like a completely different game. You know, like, Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild are nothing alike. Meanwhile, like, FromSlop is just throwing out the same game over and over and over again, just hoping that they can continue their Age of Fire perpetually, right?
I don't know about you, but I think they've managed to be very consistent and are maintaining their so-called Age of Fire for as long as possible. So I think I'm going to leave this video here. I can't be bothered covering the rest of Harmon's video, but I think you get the point of what he's gonna go and do. It's same old, same old. Harmon's got something to hate on From Software for because it's not Nintendo. But anyway, I'll see you on the next video. If you wish to help me reach 2,000 subs. Then I start streaming. So that is all. I'll see you on the next video, which is, I think, the Xbox Showcase. And that's gonna be pretty fun. I wonder how miserable it's gonna be or good, who knows. I just hope there's a Gears collection there. I don't really care about much else. So anyway, I'll see you when that video happens. Take care.